in the wake of Nu, a report on state repression following the violence that happened in Nu last year. 1 week ago, on July 22nd, the Braj Mandal Jal Abhishek Yatra wound its way peacefully through Nu district. But the same yatra last year was met with violence, resulting in the deaths of 3 persons and followed by a campaign of state repression that PUDR found lasts till today. What was a brief incident of communal violence on July 31st, 2023 became a pretext for state repression involving arrests, custodial torture, and even, more worryingly, the invocation of charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. While demolitions in Nu last year, which were often carried out with inadequate notice, resulting in nearly 1,200 structures predominantly belonging to Muslim residents of the district, received a lot of media attention, I'd like to draw your attention to some other findings in PUDR's report that received comparatively less media attention. First, of 441 arrests that were made in Nu violence cases till June last month, 427 are of Muslim residents and only 14 of Hindus. This is despite the fact that it is widely reported that many of the yatris in the Braj Mandal Yatra last year were armed, but the only yatri against whom the police has initiated action is the self-styled cow vigilante Bittu Bajrangi. Even the case against him was filed after a delay of 15 days by a police functionary, which the court noted while granting Bittu Bajrangi bail. We analyzed a randomly selected sample of 100 bail orders that the court passed in Nu violence cases. Now, while bail is never supposed to be granted on the merits of a case, courts are supposed to examine factors such as nature of allegations against the accused, what is the kind of evidence against them while adjudicating bail. Therefore, these bail orders provide official corroboration to what a lot of the testimonies indicated to PUDR. In 91% of the detailed bail orders in our sample, the court explicitly noted the lack of incriminating material against the accused. For example, in one case, in one set of cases, in one police station, several individuals had been implicated in as many as 17 FIRs, including an individual who has a 75% orthopedic disability. The court noted while granting bail that it was humanly not possible for anyone, let alone someone with a disability, to be involved in 17 different incidents that allegedly all occurred at the same time. In yet another set of cases, the court noted that as per location data that was available with the police, the accused was not even present at the spot, and in fact in one case had been 500 kilometers away from Nu when the violence occurred. In yet another case, which involved an attack on the cyber crime cell in Nu, which is a case where we would assume that the police investigation would be particularly robust, given that the boundary wall of a police station was destroyed. In that case, we have bail orders that the court granted as recently as January of this year, where the court noted that till that date, the police had still not analyzed the CCTV footage of the Thana to verify whether the people they had arrested were actually present at the scene of the alleged crime or not. Third, in January and February 2024, charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act were added to 4 of the 60 FIRs that the police registered in relation to Nu. Now, the charges under the UAPA that were added are sections 10 and 11. These are not the terrorist activity charges that the UAPA is usually invoked for, but instead pertain to unlawful associations and their funding. Now, sections 10 and 11 of the UAPA can be invoked only when an association has been declared unlawful by the central government under section 3 of the Act, and a tribunal comprising a sitting High Court judge has confirmed this declaration. And so it beggars the question as to how these charges and on what basis these charges have been invoked in Nu violence cases, when of the 25 to 30 odd associations that are currently declared unlawful by the central government, there is not even one of which there have ever been any reported links between that association's alleged activities and the Nuh region, let alone what happened on July 31st, 2023 last year. In fact, one of these UAPA FIRs I'll speak about a bit in depth. This FIR involves a complaint merely of the looting of goods and arson of a grocery shop. In this complaint, a few months later, in a highly belated manner, the elected local Congress MLA of the area, Mamman Khan, was named, allegedly for putting up social media posts that incited the violence, and the police even termed him one of the main conspirators of the event. The court, while granting Mamman Khan bail, in fact noted that there were no such posts to be found on Mamman Khan's social media accounts that could be termed as inciting the violence. In another twist, the only evidence cited against Mamman Khan was the disclosure statement of a co-accused. Now that co-accused, the court had granted him bail because the period of violence in Nuh, that co-accused had actually been employed by the Haryana Roadways and had been involved in checking duty, as confirmed by CCTV footage, at a bus depot several kilometers away from the date. This is the kind of flimsy evidence that had been arrayed against Mamman Khan, as a result of which he had been granted bail. Several months later, it is in cases such as this, where there is absolutely no material that one could imagine that could justify even the ordinary Indian Penal Code charges in this FIR, that the police added charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Lastly, apart from this sort of indiscriminate and baseless arrest, there were flagrant and large-scale human rights violations that occurred from the time of arrests onwards. Raids involved excessive police force, where several family members were injured in police beatings and property in people's homes wantonly destroyed. There were allegations of custodial torture, including the particularly brutal form of roller torture, where accused persons were stripped naked, made to lie down on the ground, and heavy iron rollers were rolled on their thighs. Even more worryingly, we have at least one reported instance where a person filed a writ petition in the Punjab and Haryana High Court, alleging that even in judicial custody, in the Nuh district jail, jail officials and police officials had assaulted him and several other inmates, as well as subjected them to communal abuse. Lastly, even persons with additional vulnerabilities, such as Rohingya refugees, many of whom have been living in the Nuh region since 2012, and minors, were not spared any of these violations. The fact that the Yatra passed peacefully through Nuh this year asks us to investigate why last year's Yatra and the state response, were communalized. However, as the PUDR report endeavors to show, it is unfortunate that the police investigation into the Nuh violence so far does not appear to be bringing any of the culprits to book, and the reality of what happened remains in a haze. As a result, PUDR demands that an independent inquiry be initiated into these police excesses, departmental action accordingly be initiated, as well as compensation given, and that charges under the UAPA be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Just like to add one thing over here. We were very relieved, and not just us, but many of the people that we were speaking with in Nuh, that the 22nd Jal Abhishek Yatra passed off peacefully. They were very relieved because they have already paid the price for a year onwards. And also, especially in the previous year, they had warned that because of the provocation and because of some amount of the conversations amongst young Muslim youth, they were apprehensive of violence happening. And it was quite surprising that the police in charge had gone on leave the very day in which this yatra took place. So it's a kind of and as you may know, Mewat is an area which has a strong Muslim presence and has got a history, and a very self-conscious history going back to many, many centuries. So this an element of trying to provoke a reaction And what we have found out, and what we tried to show in this report, a very biased and cut back, a repression, as we would say it, on Muslim communities in forms of destruction of property and in forms of the arrest. So that's it from our side. I would now request Justice Lokur to please share his thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that I welcome a report of this nature. The reason is that, there are several instances and incidents that take place from time to time. But there's a report about them in the newspapers. Maybe there's something said about it on TV. But what has actually happened, one doesn't get to know. Because after a couple of days, TV debates or TV discussions stop. Newspaper reports stop. And what happened actually, one really doesn't know. Now, the government is also reluctant to appoint some kind of a commission, a judicial commission or some other kind of magisterial commission, which will give an unbiased account of what has happened. So, it's eventually left to civil society to, come out with what they believe is the truth after discussing it with several persons who've been involved. And that is what PUDR has done. They sent a team to NU and they spoke to just about everybody who was involved in it, whether it was the victims or whether it was persons who were accused, families of victims, families of accused, the lawyers who were representing the accused, and so on. So really this, forms a basis, so to speak, of what has happened. Now, if the report of PUDR is incorrect, I think they should set up a judicial inquiry and say, well, this is what actually happened. But no judicial inquiry is likely to be set up in spite of the fact that a recommendation has been made in the report that please set up a judicial commission to look into it. I don't think that's going to be done. In any case, it's more than a year, almost a year that has passed by. So it's unlikely that anything will be done. So really, this is only the fact-finding report that is available to us today. Now, so that's the reason why I welcome it, because at least there is something which is available to tell us what actually happened. Now, there are a lot of things which have been discussed in the report. Let me start with the police, okay, because that's really the first step. Police accountability. Now, what I find, from what has been happening over the last so many years in not only in Delhi but also in other parts of the country, that the police are not accountable to anything. All right. Now, if there's a fake encounter or something, the police get away with it. The worst that happens to a police officer is that he gets transferred from one district to another. In any case, the PUDR recommends departmental action, but that's not enough, because people have died. 3 people have died. 2 of them were home guards. There was another third person. So if there are deaths that are involved, transferring a police officer from one place to another really doesn't serve any purpose. So police accountability, I think, has to be there. Otherwise, these kind of things will happen, and they have been happening. And the persons who are responsible for the violence or the persons who are responsible for preventing the violence, they get away with whatever has happened. The second aspect about police accountability, which again has been mentioned in the report, is about torture, right? They have mentioned about physical torture, about rollers being put on the thighs of some of the accused persons to make them, confess and so on. Now, physical torture is one thing. Okay, now they've also found that there is no evidence of injury being caused to a person because of the use of the roller. All right, so there are these sophisticated methods of torturing. There is also something which, I describe as soft torture, which is something which is not necessarily physical, but which is something, something to do with the mind or loss of dignity, right, or some kind of trauma that is inflicted on a person. For example, and this has been mentioned over there in the report, you put 20 persons in a room, all right, and tell them that now you look after yourself. Now, the room cannot handle 20 persons. Okay, so where do they sleep? All right, if they want to go to the washroom or to the toilet, where do they go? Okay, what about things like food? What about keeping some persons in isolation? I think 2 persons perhaps were kept in isolation for some time. This is soft torture. I mean, you're not being beaten up, but in a sense you're being tortured, because you're having to live with 20 persons in a room which can be good enough for about 5 or 10 persons. There's not enough place to sleep. There are people sleeping on top of each other. There are persons who are having to stay awake so that the others sleep and then they get their turn to sleep. So this is something which I think also needs to be looked into on a systemic basis, that is soft torture. The second is, the courts. Now, I found it, very nice that out of the 100 bail orders that they examined, bail was given in 85 of them. I said, very good. 85 is a pretty good figure. But why was the bail given? That came a few sentences later. Bail was given because there was no evidence. All right. Now, if there is no evidence, why were these persons arrested? Okay, the police know whether there is evidence or whether there is not any evidence. They also know that if the evidence is there, whether it will stand scrutiny in a court. But the idea is, let's punish this person. One day he's going to get away with it. The court is probably going to acquit him. But until then, let him spend a week, let him spend a month. In this case, several months. The incident happened in July 31st. People were arrested in the first or second week of August, released sometime in December, sometime in January. And those who could have been released, charges of UAPA were, thrust down their throat. So the idea is that keep a person in jail as long as you can. Now, what happens is you put in some trumped up charges, some false charges. A person is 500 kilometers away. You say that, listen, you were there at the site. It's going to take him some time to prove that he was not at the site. Okay? But then the trial will go on, and the trial can go on in India, in the district courts, it can go on for years together. So until then, not only is the person in jail, but he has to go to court every now and then, to report to the court that, listen, I have not run away, I'm still around, I'm willing to face trial and so on. That by itself is a harassment. Okay, as they say, the process is the punishment. So put up false charges, put up trumped up charges so that the police achieves their objective of harassing the person, either through incarceration or through having to go to the court from time to time. This is where I think the judiciary comes in. So the judiciary, I think, has to be alert to the fact that, listen, there is no case made out, or a case has been made out which is difficult to believe. For example, at least in one case, if not in two, there were 17 FIRs on the same day. In some cases, there were 6 FIRs for the same day. Now, how can that happen? Okay, so the court has to be alert to say that, listen, the story that you're putting up is a cock and bull kind of story. I'm not prepared to believe it, and there is something more to it. But what happens is that the courts are overburdened, particularly the trial courts, the district courts, they are overburdened. So there are instances, and again, PUDR has mentioned it, the person is not even produced in the court, all right? Even though video conferencing is available, they're not produced through video conferencing. I'm not very much in favor of production through video conferencing. But even if one goes through video conferencing, all right, how about producing them through video conferencing? Even that is not done. The whole idea of producing a person before the court is to give the court an opportunity to find out why is that person arrested, has that person been subjected to some kind of torture, right? If there is some visible mark on the body, if that person wants to say something, that can be done. But if you don't produce a person in court, first of all, it is unconstitutional. Secondly, you deprive that person of a chance to be able to say what he wants to say in court. Third is the bail conditions. Now, many of these people, those 85 cases that they have examined, in many of them, persons were granted bail on producing a surety of 50,000 rupees, producing a surety of 1 lakh rupees. Now, it has come out in the introductory chapter that there is a great deal of poverty in Noor district. So to expect a person, to come out with a surety of 50,000 or 1 lakh is not easy. And if you take, multiple cases against a person, 17 cases, and you say, well, you produce 1 lakh surety in all 17 cases, 17 lakhs, where is the person going to get that kind of money from? Where is that person going to get that kind of a surety from? So bail conditions also have to be reasonable. One thing which you have not looked at, but I think it's very, very important, considering that it is a constitutional right that is free legal aid. Did the legal aid authorities come into the picture? Was the District Legal Services Authority involved? Because many of them, if they go to a lawyer, the lawyer is going to say, you give me money, right? I'm not going to appear for you free of cost. What happens in a situation like that? He says, I don't have the money. What happens? He goes to jail undefended. That's where legal aid comes in, right? And I wish you had spoken to the legal aid people to tell them that, listen, what are you guys doing? You are supposed to help the people who are indigent, okay? And if they don't have the money, appear on their behalf. Give them good legal advice, appear on their behalf, represent them in the court. Tell the court that, listen, this is, they are innocent, they've not done anything wrong. They were 500 kilometers away, or they were not at this place, and so on and so forth. Or they're being victimized. So legal aid is very, very important, but I'm afraid we're not giving the kind of importance to legal aid as we should. With the result that, persons stay on in jail. The fourth aspect, or the third aspect, is about demolitions. Okay, now the police decide, or somebody in the administration decides, you're guilty. Okay, why are you guilty? Because I think you're guilty, so therefore I will come and demolish your house. Notice is not given. Sometimes backdated notices are pasted over there in the morning that notice was given 15 days ago or 20 days ago, no reply. And the house is demolished. Now, there are problems. One problem is that the person has probably built the house I'm assuming for the sake of argument, that it's on encroached land or it's illegally constructed. Even if it is illegally constructed, even if it is on encroached land, a person is entitled to say something, maybe justify it. You think it's illegal, illegal, but, well, the person may show to you that it is not illegal. There may be some reason for it. There are instances of persons who have got completion certificates, but the house has been demolished because the police say, or the authorities say, well, I'm not going to look at the completion certificate. My job is to demolish the house. My job is not to find out whether your house is legal or not. My job is to demolish the house, so I'm here to demolish it, and I'm going to demolish it, come what may. So that's one aspect, the person is rendered homeless. The second aspect, what about the stuff inside the house? People have things, personal belongings inside the house. They may have some important papers, okay? They may have some material goods. You might have a TV. You might have, a fridge. Now you come and demolish the house, the whole thing is in a rubble. How do you, now you haven't got the TV free, you haven't got the fridge free, but it's destroyed, it's made unusable because of the rubble. So there are, these kind of problems that arise with demolitions. The timing of the demolition also is very, very important. Many years ago, I came across a situation in Mumbai. It was Bombay at that time, where the authorities had decided that during the monsoon time, that's in the month of June and July, they will not demolish houses. They will not evict persons. Why? Because where are these people going to go? The monsoon in Bombay is, pretty heavy. Where are they going to go? So whatever you want to do, either do it well before the monsoons or do it after the monsoon. So that these guys are not homeless in the rain. That is, showing some kind of compassion or some kind of empathy to the persons. But here, whether it's winter, whether it's summer, 50 degrees, whether it's winter, 2 degrees, the idea is demolish the home. What is that person going to do? Okay, if it's winter, probably the quilts are inside the rubble, under the rubble, so you can't do anything about it. So these are, all kinds of problems that persons face. The last thing that I would like to say is about the minors, juveniles. Now this is something which the police do very often, and it seems to have happened over here as well. What the police do is they arrest a person or they detain a person, produce him in court and say he's 19 years old. Okay, so if he's 19 years old, he's not a child. A child is up to the age of 18. Now, how do you prove that I'm not 19? Okay, you don't have any papers with you when you're arrested. You're not taken for a medical examination. In none of these cases, I found that, under the law, you're supposed to, before arresting a person, you're supposed to take him to for a medical examination, so that in case he has some problem or something, that can be taken care of. Now here, minors are arrested. They're said that you are 19 years old. The judge looks at the person and says, yeah, maybe he's 19 years old, maybe he's 17 years old, I don't know. The police says he's 19, so he must be 19, so send him to an adult prison. Now, an adult prison is very, very different from an observation home for children. In an adult prison, you're with perhaps persons who have committed more than one offense or are accused of having committed more than one offense. But that's not necessarily the case in an observation home. Life is completely different in an observation home and in a jail like Tihar or whatever district jail they have in Nu. But the police get away with it. That's where accountability comes in. Supposing later on it is found that this person is not 19 years old. What happens? The fact is he has spent time in unlawful detention, unlawful custody. And the police doesn't even say, sorry, we made a mistake. That's not there. Sometimes compensation is given. But does the compensation do anything to the, mental trauma that the person has undergone? Can you buy peace just because you've been given maybe ₹1 lakh? You had a loss of dignity in these kind of places. And you say, all right, doesn't matter, I won't say sorry to you. Maybe somebody will give you, some money. When that money will come to you as by way of compensation, I don't know. It may come after 1 year, it may come after 6 months, it may never come. We've had this situation in Hathras, You would have read about this girl who was gang raped and died. The newspapers say that in 2022, the government had said that we will give them an alternative accommodation because they can't live in that place. We are in 2024. Alternative accommodation has still not been given, and the Allahabad High Court is looking into it. So what's, a lakh of rupees? You say, I'm not giving it. Now, is this person going to go to court and say that, listen, you had promised me a lakh of rupees? He doesn't have the money to go to court. So these are, problems which are human problems and which are being faced on a day-to-day basis. It's not only a question of fundamental rights, it's not only a question of civil rights, it's a question of human dignity. It's a question of the rule of law. What are we looking at? Are we looking at destroying the rule of law? Are we looking at destroying human dignity of these persons? So it's in this context, please look at the report. I think you've done an excellent job, you and the others. Well, congratulations to all of you. You've highlighted just about everything. The only thing which I could find was about legal aid, free legal aid. But everything else has been highlighted, so congratulations to you for an excellent job. And I hope these instances don't happen again. But if they do, please come out with another report. Thank you and all the best.
Perhaps give an excuse of why we did not look at the free legal aid is because there's a very active grassroots-based civil society in NU. And a lot of the depth of our report, a lot of the facts of our report have been given to us by these lawyers who've taken up almost all of these cases. So that could be an excuse, though it is true, as a legal right, free legal aid should be given to people, and that is a miss on our part, and we will keep that in mind in future. But credit goes to the grounded civil society in NU who have taken up all of these cases and ensured that as much as possible they have legal representation. Professor Mohanty, may I request you?
There are two distinct things about PUDR investigations. One is socioeconomic context, the history of that whole situation. Therefore, you put that particular violation, particular incident in a historical perspective, in a larger perspective, without forgetting the immediate demands. You will always see the immediate demands. In fact, the three demands at the end, listed at the end, don't even call for a judicial inquiry into the whole thing. We have perhaps given it up because, as you alluded to, it's too late probably. Or maybe it's not too late, but there are very concrete demands on investigation into police behavior, investigation into jail treatment, and also removal of charges of UAPA, that horrendous addition in January, February of UAPA charges. So that's one thing. And the second aspect of PUDR investigations is the focus on the state. We can't make too many demands on everybody. Our report is to the democratic civil society, and public opinion makers and the overall opinion making participants, the press, the parliament, if possible, the political parties, but mostly into a whole range of democratic social movements and democratic social groups. So we demand on the state what the government of the day should do. But in our overall report, you can see the understanding of the difference between government and the state. Government and its functionaries at a particular point of time. You can see the present moment in Indian political history and the present government and its how it is using the governmental agencies. And there, this particular incident and the police behavior, the forest department was present in the demolitions. Look at that. And some retroactive decisions were taken about declaring some areas as forest areas. And some notices were pasted, predated. Jubair's 3-storied building was getting demolished, and he got the information and came and said, look, I have all the papers, the approval papers. But they wouldn't listen. Anyway, so the overall context is very important. We focus on the state. You know, therefore, the most important thing to note is this report vividly records the new stage of communal state repression in India. New stage of communal state repression in India, which is characterized by a phenomenon where communal forces, and in this case in the post, so there is a provocation period, then there is the actual incident where brutalized Muslim youth got mobilized, and the provocateurs got, the Hindutva provocateurs, Bajrang Dal, VHP and so on, they got an excuse to react very strongly, and thereafter you see this convergence. The state agencies and the this authoritarian communal social groups, organized communal groups. So our new period of this communal state terror is, state repression is characterized by a heightened degree of convergence. We have seen such convergence in the past, both in Gujarat and in Delhi riots. But this is far more stabilized, institutionalized and widespread, and directed at different levels in a more systematic way. So this is a new stage of communal state repression in India with many new characteristics. As I said, PUDR reports are focused on the state because we have a certain theory of the state. We believe that state, yes, you know, the ruling forces of society, their aggregate power structure is the state. Whether it is media or in the parliament or the police or the army or the bureaucracy, you know, and the corporate, you know, they are all integrated. But the state is based on the constitutional framework. The constitution is a product of a liberation struggle, anti-colonial struggle. It's not the most ideal document, but ideal enough. Our preamble is a great document. And there are many very important provisions. And we believe, the civil liberty and democratic rights movement in India believes that we can cite the constitutional provisions to alert all the institutions of the state, particularly the courts and the executive, and particularly the police, jail authorities, courts, and of course the parliament and the lawmakers, that look, this is what the constitution says. You know, some 10 years ago, I and a group had produced a book called Weapon of the Oppressed, an inventory of people's rights in India. One of my collaborators had very seriously objected to the title. He said, law is not a weapon of the oppressed. Today, we have the second edition is coming out now. We have changed the title. We call it Rights of the Oppressed. Because very clearly from UAPA to MPLA, and we have an expert here, Ujjwal Singh, who writes on that. I mean, it's very, very clear. Law as a weapon of the oppressor. You see, so the duality of the state, the law, and the state process. The imbalanced duality, in other words, it is always tilted in favor of the rulers, but there are possibilities, there are spaces, and we seek to explore those spaces and Justice Lokur, both in office, had created some space. And there are many like him, many institutions, and now we continue to carry that process.
To add one thing over here, make one clarification for everybody over here. The focus of this report is on what has happened at New district. Because what happens at New district is totally different from what happens in the violence which took place around the same time in different areas, surrounding areas, especially in Gurugram. So that's just one caveat which I would like to put in over here, that this focuses on New. So now, please do share your questions, and we have, in fact, Professor Mohanty and Justice Lokur, who will also be able to put in their words, but we've got the team over here, and we can respond to any questions.
How many people are still in the jail? And what are the reasons given for them to keep in there?
So police officials were unable to confirm to us the exact number of people who still remain in custody. Therefore, the only numbers we were able to come up with are based on our random sample. But that's only a random sample.
When you say random sampling, what exactly, how many households did you cover, or what was the methodology?
Yeah, so briefly, if I'll just say 2 sentences about the methodology, it's also outlined in detail in the report. There are 60 FIRs total in new violence cases.
So you followed the FIRs?
Yes, ma'am. So of those 60 FIRs, 11 FIRs had to be excluded for technical reasons which we've outlined in the report. Of the remaining 49, we randomly sampled 25. In each of these 25 FIRs, we further randomly sampled 4 bail orders in each FIR, resulting in a total of 100 bail orders.
Would you like to say something, Harish?
No, just this much, that one of the things that I think has been missed out in most of the reporting, this is particularly to do with the demolitions that occurred. One of the kinds of demolitions that occurred was of extremely poor people who live in this small margin between the fields of villages and the Aravali hills. This is a community which is just residing in these corners, people who don't own any land, and they work as laborers in New Town, or they work and try to eke out a living by keeping chickens or goats, and they take the goats out into the hills. It is these people who were attacked in a manner which is quite different. A day before, that's on the 2nd of August, policemen accompanied by some people who claimed to be Bajrang Dal people with these orange scarves around them came and demolished not the houses but the goods that these people had. Whatever kinds of goods, from grain storage tanks, okay, those things in which you store your grain, or earthen things, so you destroy all the grain, you mix up the grain with mud. They come and break down a water cooler. If they have a fridge, somebody has a motorcycle. So each of these things are smashed there. And they go, this is 3 settlements around this Nalhar village. And they go from one settlement to the next during the afternoon and evening of the 2nd. On the 3rd of August, come the police forces along with the official demolition squads. And they now, the goods of the houses have already been destroyed, and they come with the JCB machines to destroy the houses. Remember, these are, apart from 1 or 2 rooms that might be pakka in the nature, it has something like a pakka roof. Most of them are thatch roof. Okay, even they may have brick walls, or they may even have fabric walls. So these kinds of structures, and people who are living at somehow trying to eke out a living. And what happened to them over this period of time, we met them again a whole year later, trying to rebuild something of what they had in the past. There's no reason to be, because those people are still there. So the idea that they were on forest land and therefore have to be evicted means nothing, because the people are still there. It's just that probably 10 years of whatever they had accumulated has now been destroyed. So they go back 10 years back in time, not having all those belongings that they have over a period of time accumulated. So this is one of those things which just didn't, I mean, the kind of what happened to this community of people, and secondly, the kind of liaising that was happening between state authorities, the police and Bajrang Dal, kind of lumpens, seems to have been completely not seen in much of the reportage. So I thought that's one thing that needed to be emphasized.
Yes,
I would
sir.
like to ask, when this matter was reported to High Court or Supreme Court, what was their reaction? I was a little late, I couldn't hear. So, did you find anything successful to give the, whatever he's saying or what you people are saying, that they were, the dwellings were demolished without any notice? So naturally, you must have moved to the Supreme Court or the High Court. So what was their reaction? Because judiciary is supposed to be when media doesn't function or the government doesn't function or the executive doesn't function, then judiciary becomes, the watchword. So what is their, sort of action?
Yeah, I think-
Thank you.
See, there was the Punjab and Haryana High Court took suo moto notice of the kind of demolition which is taking place. Along with it, some other people from the area had also moved applications in the High Court. So the High Court immediately ordered a stop on the demolitions.
That is good.
That's
This
the
is on
first thing.
7th of August.
However, during that period, some 1,200 or whatever dwellings, shops, establishments had already been demolished.
Did they get compensation?
Yes. And now, if you follow what has happened in the press, which we have, what we know is most recently in the Punjab Haryana High Court, they are now attending to the compensation matter. But we did discover that when we went the last time, one of the tile showrooms which belonged to
Zubair.
Zubair, he has not been given.
No, he just said that, those whose cars were destroyed or vehicles were damaged, they've got compensation. But when the state itself is responsible for your damage, then, asking for compensation is asking for trouble. And he doesn't, that was his immediate thing. Till the time rioters have done some damage, you can still ask for compensation because the insurance companies will pay you. But till the time when the state itself is taking responsibility for having demolished your house, then insurance companies are not going to work there.
Yeah.
Just one thing to add. So the question of demolitions, as pointed out, the Punjab and Haryana High Court acted. However, one of the main focus of this report is on non-demolition related aspects of state repression, starting from large-scale arrests, raids, which outside of demolitions involved wanton destruction of people's homes, property. You're arresting one person, you're beating up their mother and father so violently that their nails are breaking. In addition, custodial torture, etc. Here, however, we do not see similar relief at all being granted. Now, there's two reasons for this. One or two anecdotes I'll just highlight. In one case, a resident whose home was raided and several property destroyed did happen to have a CCTV camera in his house. He tried to file a complaint with the DG. The police this was reportedly told to us by the lawyers, the local lawyers, that the police said, look, you withdraw your complaint, otherwise we will implicate you in the new violence cases without basis. So on one hand, you have these structural reasons, where even where these large-scale violations are happening at the time of arrest, the person has no real way to ask for remedy. Second, as Justice Lokur had also pointed out, the court, production before a court, remand proceedings are supposed to be the legal system's answer as a way of finding remedies at this initial stage. Oftentimes, people were not produced in court. Second, even the roller torture, as various methods of torture are evolved, we were told that the roller is rolled on the person's thighs, because if you take a roller that's that heavy and you roll it on a bone, the bone will break. But if you roll it on the thighs, you will cause excruciating pain, but you're less likely to leave any visible marks. Now, in a situation like that, we had someone say that, okay, they were taken for their customary medical checkup before jail. But there they tried to tell the doctor that this has happened, but the doctor instead accepted the police's version, and that was the only thing recorded in the MLC. So while demolitions did get some legal relief from the High Court, it is these mundane, routine, large-scale violations in arrest that have not seen any relief. As for the brutal assault that was reported in jail, a writ petition was filed by the inmate before the Punjab and Haryana High Court, saying that jail authorities and police officials, which is even more worrying, right? Because judicial custody, you're supposed to have jail staff do not come from the same cadre that police officers come from. What is the point of that? The entire point of that is that they should be less vulnerable to these sorts of pressures. In that case, the writ petition that's been filed in the Punjab and Haryana High Court, notice has been issued, but orders in that case are awaited.
Yeah, sir.
So like I came late, so that I just missed also the initial part. But as we are discussing about demolition, so the focus of this report is new. But before coming to it, like so demolition as a tool of punishment, coming of this category, like you like punishing certain arena of like people, community, or based on their religion or anything like. In UP we see it like based on caste also. We saw in based on like opposition party also. So how do we see like this category of demolition as a punishing category by state, and then because all these the hooliganism and like shop shifting, and we show and like we have read in nationalism thing that people are doing against the Britishers and all, but this thing is happening with some those people are doing with like Bajrang Dal, and then the state is coming with other thing like what I don't know what their psyche of pride and punishing people. So at the more or less this like category of demolition as a punishment, because it is I think unhistorical. It hasn't been seen like at this level and all. So how do we see it like, and what's the future after this all?
So, if I could just say, Professor Mohanty had raised this point about how civil society, you can find one form of civil society which is democratic civil society, and there's another form of civil society which you could call the opposite, let's say undemocratic. You could also call it fascist, or you could call it, so you have something which takes place in on 31st of July. There's a provocation, there's a violence, and that in the new district is a question of, provocation is a few days in its build-up, and the violence is for maybe 2 or 3 hours from the early afternoon to the evening. That's it. Now, so that you can say is like something between civil society, a violence, a civil conflict. But consequent to that, in Nu, you have all these forms of bias and repression, what Professor Mohanty called communalized repression, where it's not just demolition. Demolition, as you very rightly said, is one additional tool which has come. It is violence, it is arrests, it is torture, it is the whole process is punishment, and added to that is demolitions. So we need to see demolitions certainly as a new aspect of this communalized repression, but we need to see it as acting as part of all of the other things which are continuing. So, and what we are wanting to have is that because over here, as again Professor Mohanty said, the focus is on the state. One does not expect, and one demands that the state not be biased in its actions. And what our report has, proved, and what we stand by our report is that there has been, bias to the degree that we are actually calling it repression. So that's the report.
Can I just, if you see, हमने page 7 में we have made a mention of the demolition, and what we found quite horrifying is, वो news reports में ही थे, that जो officer on special duty to the chief minister, he defended what he called bulldozer justice. This is before the Punjab Haryana High Court stopped the demolition. So it was very clear that the bias of the state officials was already in place when the chief minister, he just said it on the 1st of August, he called it a pre-planned part of a larger conspiracy.
one thing I would like to ask, dispute arises for any reason, and there are, both sides, they enter into a conflict. But ultimately, you have to reach to a conclusion of counseling.
Yes.
Has any counseling been done?
Yes.
Because the dispute started from new violence. You say for 4 hours, 3 hours. So I'm asking whether any counseling has been given to the people around who created the chaos. This is my question.
Sir, if I can just answer, we went to Nu because there was violence on 31st of July. The provocation was shown on the side of the Muslim youth, and this was unfortunate because the subsequent attack was on them. We think this was a price they have had to pay. But the very fact that on July 22nd, 2024, the yatra went peacefully, sir, it means the counseling has worked.
Instead of attacking the Muslim youth, if the counseling would have been given to the Muslim youth, that this is not the right thing to approach, and this is not the right thing to do, that would have.
Well, it
probably happened.
has happened.
It has happened.
Can I just add briefly?
One sir.
This is an area which has a long history of peaceful life, and majority, a very large majority are Muslims, but therefore, the new phenomenon is the provocation and the mobilization, and the local people, and the report says in many places, people say outsiders came and did this. Our area has a long tradition of peace. Therefore, something has.
The outsider came.
No, we are saying that that is what was told to us.
Oh. But it
Yeah, we are not commenting on it. We are saying that is what people say. Our point was to investigate what happened subsequently. But an answer to your question is, we think the counseling has happened in the sense that this time it went off well. But the price should not be this.
Just before we break, I would just request, just Lokur, if there's anything that you'd like to say at the end of this interaction.
Well, no, there's nothing that I would like to add to what I've already said, except that, I think we need to inculcate in our society the need to research these kind of, events or instances or incidents. Because, like I said in the beginning, it's very unlikely that you will get the government to say that, we're setting up a judicial commission. If they wanted to do that, they would have done it much earlier. So what happens? I mean, do we just, some event occurs and we just forget about it, talk about it in the newspapers, talk about it on TV, talk about it on radio, and forget about it? What about posterity? Are they supposed to know anything about it or not? So I think the idea of reports of this kind are very, very important for the current and for the future. And I would certainly say, like I said earlier, that I hope these things don't happen again. But if they do, please, prepare reports.
Professor Mohanty, a last word?
Oh, when I said there is a new stage of this communalized state terror, obviously there are political meaning. We have to find out. No, but we have had Delhi riots also. Therefore, it's not only. That's why I said we have to understand the nature of our state. What are the forces that create such power structures which then get mobilized to target certain communities and poor and in a place. No. Therefore, we would like, people and our state agencies to respect the constitution and rule of law.
That's right.
That is very important as under the constitution.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.